Memorial here on campus. This is part of Homecoming and Family Weekend. We wish you were here on our campus to physically join with us, as many of you have enjoyed in the past, but we will do this as best we can in this virtual format. We are recording this so others can start this over or watch again or watch entirely at some point in the future on the Homecoming schedule page of our website. So my name is Karl Sisson, and I serve as the Vice President for Advancement and External Engagement here at the college. And I have other members of our team, including President Mullen, that will have pre-invited some guests to join us this morning. And we're going to talk about endowment and the power of endowment. And we're going to do that by some storytelling. These are all folks that we've specifically invited who, through the course of Impact, the Campaign for Greater Houghton, made decisions to give toward endowment in a couple of different ways. And some of whom have already made decisions about aligning their estate plans to further grow endowment as well. And so, you know, and others of my team can jump in at any point, but endowment is absolutely critical for the not only right now, but obviously the future of Houghton College. And we couldn't be more grateful for the outcomes from Impact that allowed us to significantly grow our endowment. We watched our alumni and friends step in incredible ways. As I think you all have heard more than once, 90 new endowed scholarships were created over the course of the campaign, but that's actually only part of the endowment story. We have many people who gave toward existing endowed funds through the course of the campaign in a number of different ways, gave toward general endowment as well. And so we are excited about the future. Ben Colter, I'm going to ask you, Ben's guest that was planning to join us, Sue Lenz from the class of 1970, Sue and her family created the Lenz Music Scholarship during the course of the campaign. And then they also created a trust bequest to further grow that scholarship at some point in the future. Well, Sue is unable to join us. So Ben, I'm going to give you a different role. Would you just kick our time off in prayer this morning?
Sure. Lord, thanks for these fellow sojourners that have joined us on this journey. Thank you for the legacy of Houghton College. Thank you for the incredible alumni that have been in these hallowed halls and for the work that they do in the world. Thank you for our new students and all that lays before them. And we thank you that Christ is at the center of all that we do. We thank you for this day, for those folks who have been so much a part of the Impact campaign, for all of these that have joined us this morning, great friends, and pray that you would just be with this entire weekend. We would love to be together, but we join as best we can on this technology, and thank you for it. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ben. Ben serves here in the Office of Advancement as our Donor Engagement Coordinator, and he is connected to so many alumni in so many places, and we truly appreciate his work here. So my guest this morning is Irene Taylor from the class of 1971, and you're going to hear a theme of the 1970s with our guests here this morning. And I remember my very first trip to Houston and then San Antonio after coming to Houghton. And I'd never been to San Antonio before, beautiful city. Walked down to the Riverwalk to meet someone for lunch. And by the way, as I'm walking into the city in the Riverwalk, I am seeing Mexican and USA soccer jerseys everywhere. Everyone's wearing them. I'm like, my goodness, they are crazy about soccer here. And we sit down and in comfort for lunch, and Sam's Army, a group of Sam's Army, which are the big soccer fans, sit at a table next to us. And we start engaging in conversation. I didn't know that evening the U.S. men's national team was playing the Mexican national team. They look over and they said, hey, we have one extra ticket. Would one of you like to join us tonight? And I'm like, it's a bucket list. Like, that is, I would so love to go to a soccer match, but guess what? I had to say no, because I was heading over to the Taylor home to meet for the very first time Irene and Porter, and I'm glad I did that. And I've had subsequent visits Irene is a fantastic artist. And if you were ever in her home, you would see a variety of art. She is looking forward to being back on campus, God willing, this coming summer, if we can welcome guests back for her class reunion. And one of her heart's desires is to actually, and you can explain it better than I, Irene, is to have some outdoor art and actually paint in front of the students and the faculty and the alumni and bless them in that way, and to paint some of our buildings here on campus. So welcome, Irene. So here's my starter question. If you want to add to anything I just said, feel free. But think back, so nearly 50 years ago, who is that one significant faculty, staff, or community member who greatly impacted you in your time at Houghton?
You'll be glad to hear this, Carl. It was Robert Brown, and he was the financial officer at the time. And I had no financial resources. We were closer to poor than even middle income as a family. I had just some savings, and when I came to Houghton, he became my advocate. In fact, I don't think I could have attended Houghton, probably not past my first year, without Mr. Brown helping me not only to understand the finances better, but also he was able to round up all the financial resources that I needed, or almost all of them. So it was grants, I had loans, I had some savings, and honestly, he was the one who kept me at Houghton, I do believe. And of course, the overall picture that I was trying to think about, well, which professor, what who could I really focus on? And all I could think of was that, first of all, I don't think I ever had a negative experience with any faculty or staff at Houghton. Not one negative experience. And it seems to me that Houghton is almost like a wonderful recipe for a cake. It takes just the better the ingredients, the better the outcome. And Houghton certainly, to me, was a sort of this combination of wonderful, helpful, engaging people that just created my educational experience and left me with such a powerful experience and a continuing desire to allow other people to be able to have that sort of experience for themselves as an educational experience. So it was really it's a combination of all those people that made my experience so wonderful.
Yeah, one of my favorite memories of you, when you were up here on campus for your 45th, President Mullen, I don't know if you remember this, you had spoken to the class and kind of given just a campus update, and Irene stands up from the table and said, "Can we just stop? I want to pray for you right now." And that's the kind of heart that was so impressive to me. So you talked about Robert Brown and his impact in helping you to stay. Is that some of the motivation that prompted you and Porter, your husband, to consider creating your own endowed scholarship, to do a kind of pay it forward mentality?
Well, I think you were very helpful in clarifying how helpful it is to Houghton in its planning, so that you could be of the greatest benefit for other students, just to ease your planning, your financial planning for the school. So yes, I'm sure that my experience did have an impact, but honestly, Porter and I have always given charitably throughout the years, throughout our marriage. So it was kind of a no-brainer that we would give, but the method, of course, has changed according to even where we were in our lives. And thankfully, God has really blessed us. We have resources now that we are very happy to share with others. We're just so thankful for that. And again, Karl, you sort of led the way. You've been very persistent and helpful. So there you go.
Thank you. I had to be persistent at times because
Yes.
getting you to make decisions sometimes is the greatest challenge. And
Yes.
okay, all right. So and
Absolutely.
one of the decisions was what to name this scholarship. So tell everyone why you chose the name and why you are choosing to honor whom you are honoring.
Our scholarship is called the Arnold and Lillian Shute Memorial Scholarship. And I am a refugee. My parents were, all of us, or 7 of us, were DPs, displaced people in after World War II. I was born in Germany, and it was a sponsoring family. The Shutes were our sponsoring family that brought us to the United States. We had lived in a refugee situation for 3 years. And my mother said those were the hardest years of her life. And the Shutes were actually rather poor farmers, but they were so generous in their giving to us. And at that time, if you sponsored a refugee, you had to provide a house, and provide work for the breadwinner. So it wasn't, and you had to pay for their passage. So that, so just in honoring that family that has made such a difference in our lives, it just seemed like the right thing to do.
I can't think of a better honor than that. That, it touched me greatly when you shared that story. We want to be able to share that story with future scholarship recipients as well. And one of our goals is to write that up. And I know that's something I'll continue to be persistent to get you to write this story down so that we can share it well with future scholarship recipients. So Irene, so that we can hear other stories as well, I'm gonna pass the baton. Thank you so much for creating this legacy gift. And we look forward to sharing these stories and listening to the students' reactions as well when they understand a bigger picture and how God has weaved this tapestry over many, many years. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. I'm going to pass the baton to President Mullen, and she will introduce our next guest. Thank you, Irene.
Thank you, Karl. And I just have to say, Irene, that's a beautiful story. And we do look forward to seeing you on campus next summer. And I would love to know more about your journey. That's just a great story. So thank you. And Karl, thank you for your persistence. That's what it takes in a good VP for advancement. So that's a great story. So it's my privilege today to introduce Gary Bahler. Gary is another member of the graduates of the 1970s. He's a class of 1973 grad. Gary was a fellow major in history. That was also my major. And I think I actually did not meet Gary as a student, but I remember seeing him one day as he was leaving Dr. Lindley's office. I was a freshman and he was a senior. And I just remember him going out, and Dr. Lindley always spoke so highly of Gary Bahler. So Gary, I had a good impression of you before I ever actually met you many years later when I became the president. After Gary graduated from Houghton in history, he went on to Cornell Law School, and then he did several positions as general counsel and vice president for corporations. Most recently, from 2001 to 2014, as a senior vice president and general counsel for Foot Locker. And that's the context in which I first met Gary. So he's used his legal training in the corporate world. And I'm sure Dr. Lindley would be very pleased at that. But the last thing I want to say before I turn to Gary is Gary embodies what we want for all of our Houghton grads, the idea of being a lifelong learner. And he ended up going back to study history after he retired and did a master's degree at the School of History, Classics, and Archaeology at the University of Edinburgh. And so again, Gary, I also think Dr. Lindley would be very pleased that you end up going back and deciding to do history after your very successful career in the world of general counsel. So Gary, again, thank you for agreeing to be on the panel today. And I'm going to ask you to start with the same question that Karl asked Irene. Is there someone at Houghton, or what is it about Houghton that made you want to get that involved back in the college and then ultimately to contribute to Endowment? So we'll start there.
Well, especially given your introduction, the obvious answer to that question is Catherine Lindley, right? And I.
Well, you don't have to say that. I didn't know that you were going to, but yeah.
You know, and in that sense, I probably joined literally hundreds of students who passed through the history department and scores of students who were in the pre-law program who, you know, she sort of towers over everyone else in terms of the debt that we owe to her. But I would also say, I would echo what Irene said, which is there were any number of faculty members at Houghton who I think made a difference in my life. Some of them in fields that I studied, like Gordon Stockin or Richard Gould in classics, but also people like Ann Whiting in biology, or Jake Jacobson in mathematics, fields that actually I was a little afraid to have to study. But they also really took an interest in their students and really, you know, I really personally made a difference to me. So I owe a debt to a whole range of faculty members at Houghton.
Gary, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to a little bit. Do you mind just sharing a little bit about the comment you emailed to me about Dick Troutman? Because there might be some people on the call who knew Dick Troutman when he was a professor here, and he recently passed away. And I was actually very touched by Gary's tribute to him. So do you mind just sharing that a bit with the group?
No, not at all. I recently saw Dr. Troutman's obituary, and I mentioned to Shirley that I had gone to Houghton. They used to have a program, maybe they still do, where you could go to take a college course in the summer between your junior and senior year in high school. And that was my first introduction to Houghton. And I'd taken a Western civilization course from Dr. Troutman. And I, long before I met Catherine Lindley, because it was really my sophomore year before I encountered her on campus, the person who really sparked my interest in history was Dr. Troutman. And he was a wonderful professor. Of course, taking a course in the summer is a whole different experience because you spend 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 6 weeks with this person. I remember going up to his house and meeting his family, but really his enthusiasm and his interest in history was contagious.
Well, thank you, Gary. And as many of you know, Dick didn't stay at the college a long time, and that providential way in which God connects faculty and students as they're coming and going from Houghton, I mean, that's part of the amazing aspect of Houghton's story. So anyway, coming back to the endowment question, many people, when they give endowment, give very particularly to a certain program. And one of the things, Gary, that you have always emphasized in the conversations that you and I've had, and I imagine you've said similar things to other people in the advancement area, you've really emphasized the whole area of unrestricted endowment. And this is clearly something that you are very committed to, and it's not an accident that that's something you care about. So I really want to ask you to share with the larger group today, what is it that makes you so committed to that aspect of endowment? And tell us a little bit maybe about why unrestricted endowment is so important for a place like Houghton College.
Sure. I mean, I think it probably began quite a long time ago. As you mentioned, when I left Houghton, I went to law school at Cornell. And I have to say, when I arrived at Cornell, I was bowled over by the resources of the university, not just the physical facilities, which were impressive, but the programs and the lectures and the depth of faculty, the size of the libraries. And at that time, I don't think the tuition I was paying, or frankly, the tuition my parents were paying for me to go to Cornell, was magnitudes greater than the tuition that Houghton was charging. It probably is today, but at that point, it really wasn't. And I realized early on that sort of the riches of a place like Cornell, the riches of the university, were the result of decades of giving by friends and alumni of the university, and decades of giving to establish a very serious endowment. And I really even speculated at that point, wouldn't it be nice if proportionally Houghton had an endowment like this that could provide at Houghton the kind of resources that are available at some other places. And so when I had the opportunity to then participate in the capital campaign, I was very focused on the endowment. And, in terms of giving to the unrestricted endowment, endowment is a long-term investment in the college. And it's very difficult over the long term to anticipate what the college's needs are going to be. So again, I mentioned I studied classics with Gordon Stockin, with Richard Gould. It would have been very easy in the early 1970s to decide to make a contribution to the endowment to support the classics department. I mean, President Payne was a professor of Greek at that point. But of course, coming forward 45 years, if the college had a large endowment to support a classics department today, that would not be a particularly useful piece of the endowment for them. So if you look at the endowment as a long-term investment, then you really have to focus on providing the college, I think, with flexibility to be able to use the endowment in ways that the administration thinks are useful at points in the future that you really can't anticipate. I mean, even just thinking about our situation now, who would think that a college would need to go out and buy, acres of plexiglass and hand sanitizer and whatever else, but these situations, do come up. I think it also is helpful because, not that I'm trying to make Karl's job any easier, but it does take a little bit of the pressure off of the annual fund.
Yeah.
I think Houghton's done very well in terms of contributions to the annual fund in recent years. It's been very consistent, but the annual fund also reflects the ups and downs of the economy, situations of people who move in and move out of the contributor group, and I think unrestricted endowment, does provide a little bit of relief in terms of the annual fund, so that it's sort of a portion of the annual fund that's always there. I've actually always thought that people who contribute to the annual fund should really think seriously. And if you think about it in terms of an estate plan, it's not that bizarre a thought. If you're contributing $1,000 a year to the annual fund, if you contribute out of your estate $20,000 to the endowment, well, you're contributing $1,000 a year to the college, forever. Or the equivalent. And so there really is an opportunity there.
Gary, that is maybe the best thing that we tell people all the time. When you're gone, who's going to step in, right?
Sure,
Who's
right.
displacing that? And that's what endowment enables. That's wonderful.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. So, you know, we live in a fast changing world. We know that. And I just think unrestricted endowment is a way to contribute to the college, but in a way that, you know, allows some flexibility.
Well, that's great. I'm sure there would be a few people, Gary, that wish you had made that choice to endow the classics department, but you're absolutely right. I mean, you would have to beg students today to do that. And some of us in the humanities on the call, you know, might think that's a good thing, but you're absolutely right. That's only one example of things that seem important at the time, but might not be later on. So you've made a great case for unrestricted endowment. So Karl, I'll give it back to you and you can introduce the next person.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I, again, appreciate that. John Oden is sitting here on the call, and John reminds us all the time about the math, right? What would you need in endowment to make sure that you're producing or displacing whatever it is that you are fundraising for annually? And we love that case. I'm going to pass the baton over to Skip Lord. Skip is, most people around here call him Coach. Because he was a long-standing coach and the athletics director here in Highlander Athletics before joining the Office of Advancement a few years ago. He now serves as the National Director of Athletics Engagement. Skip is a great representative, and he is going to introduce a couple of guests who have created endowments for very specific reasons. So, Skip, you're on.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thanks for the privilege of spending my morning with you folks. It's a great way to start the day. I'm blessed to have two people with us to share today. We've been thinking since I moved into this role about ways to create some endowments within the athletics area that would allow us to do some of the same kinds of perpetual giving that we do with the institution as a whole. If we were going to play which one of these is not like the others, my first guest would win the prize there. All of our other guests are sort of in that 69 to 72 or 3 window there. Chris Cluster is from the class of '01. And we're privileged to have Chris with us, but it just shows you that you can think endowment in multiple different levels or ages or generations of your life. Chris serves at North Tonawanda City School District as their Chief Information Officer, where he's the Director of Data Security and Information Technology. And Chris has been an active Western New Yorker for years and years. He still lives in Delavan and makes that commute to North Tonawanda every day, so he knows what it means to drive. He's been involved locally. He served for years at Circle C Christian Camp and ran their finances and did some of those things. And more recently, he stepped away from that to begin a term with us in the Athletics Advisory Board. And so he's been, when Chris does something, he doesn't do it halfway. He jumps in with both feet. And so he has jumped in and has become deeply involved in our athletic program. And it's sort of a unique situation because Chris wasn't an intercollegiate athlete, and yet he has this passion for the educational value, the place of intercollegiate athletics at an institution of Christian higher education, and so Chris, thanks for taking time to be with us this morning. We appreciate it. Chris created an endowment that is sort of what Gary was talking about in a general sense with athletics. It's unrestricted. It doesn't apply to a specific team. It applies to athletics in general. But maybe we could start out, Chris, by you talking to us a little bit about why you decided to create an endowment, number one, an endowed fund, and number two, why athletics, and what were your motivating goals in doing that?
So I've been giving faithfully to both the student scholarships and athletics for a while. And I thought the money at first when I was giving for athletics was above and beyond the budget. But after having an informal conversation with the previous athletic director, I realized that it wasn't exactly that. As a K-12 educator / administrator now, I've seen that extracurricular activities and athletics getting pared down due to budgetary constraints when there's always been voting on for school budgets. So I just wanted to make sure that athletics had access to money that was above and beyond the base of the athletic budget. And as Gary said before, instead of just putting my monthly money just in the athletic department budget line, I'm just looking at to see how I could make an endowment, make a bigger impact. So that way, if I made the endowment, my monthly donation's still going into that endowment. And then any extra that I have, I can just throw in there too. So.
Excellent. What you talked a little bit generally, do you have, as a person who's committed time to serve in the athletic advisory board and obviously has made that commitment to funding some of the work that's done there, any of the goals of the department that you're particularly excited about supporting?
I don't like just to pick one. As you know, in the past, even with the extra money that I don't even give to the athletic endowment, I just actually give to all the sporting events as equally as I can. So, you know, last spring, and so does Karl and whoever was on that email, like I gave the exact amount to every single one of each of those athletic programs. So I'm not going to pick just one goal.
There you go. There you go. Can you maybe talk for a minute about the process when you decided that you wanted to create this endowment? You know, what did the process look like, and how did you'd already been giving very faithfully and very regularly to athletics and to student scholarships, and then you know what was it that caused you to say? I think you addressed this, that to move it to an endowment, but then what was the process you went through to make that happen?
So once I realized I can try to put money towards a specific area, just like athletics, but not too specific. After talking to the advancement office and you, Skip, the thought of creating that endowment was very daunting in 5 years. I mean, it's a big chunk of change. I'm still relatively young in my career and didn't really know how I was going to do it. I just knew it was the right thing to do. I just didn't know how to do it. But if you look at the timing of it or whatever, it's like planning like $5,000 a year for 5 years. It gets that magical mark. And I wasn't sure exactly what to do, but then I realized it was less than $14 a day. And sometimes I spend things on other things that's a lot more than $14 that I don't really need. And so having that perspective, I started saving my money. And then after I made that first year's worth of donation, I used my tax return for the following year's donation. And it was just kind of a blessing to see that it didn't actually hurt me financially, as I was making big chunks out of my regular budget to get this done in the time frame. But just using what I knew about the tax code and, you know, and God's blessing anyways backwards, it just worked perfectly.
And one of the other things that sort of fits in with that, Chris, that's been sort of neat is starting your endowment at this stage of life has created that endowment that not only allows your regular smaller gifts to continue to grow that endowment, but has also given us a tool in the athletic department. You and I've talked about this. It gives us a tool that if I'm out talking to somebody who wants to do something more impactful, where their money will make a difference long term, but they can't maybe afford to do an endowment themselves, they can actually contribute to the endowment that you started and sort of bless things that way. So you've done a great job of creating a not only something that provides resources. I just talked to Matt Webb, our athletic director, the other day, and they have purchased a sound system that is something that their coaches and especially their athletics communications people really needed. And they have purchased a sound system out of the resources that come in from your endowment. So I'm excited to see how that impacts things as we go forward.
And that was nice to see too, because I did get my endowment portfolio, whatever we call it, document. Was it yesterday or the day before? And I opened it, this little piece of paper falls out. I'm like, well, this is unusual. And then it was a little note from Matt saying what they bought out of the endowment fund. So that was actually like a joy and a blessing to see physical stuff coming out of the endowment, even though like I'm there a lot pre-COVID, was there all the time visiting all the sports, the meetings and stuff, and talking to the coaches and some of the athletes. And it was good to have that connection again, even though I couldn't be there. Great.
Well, again, thank you very much, Chris. Your commitment to Houghton, your commitment to athletics, your commitment specifically to the students at Houghton. I know you take a very relational approach to how you do things. Your proximity to college allows you to be involved in ways that sometimes folks that are farther away can't do. But you have not only invested financially, but personally in the lives of our students. And I just want to thank you for that. So. Second person that I'm fortunate to have with us this morning is moving back into the more traditional group there, Terry Lee. Terry is a retired, class of 72, retired county probation director. Ontario County. And not only is Terry probably the super fan, he comes to, there's rarely an athletic event that Terry doesn't come to that I don't think he may have the award for attending the most Houghton contests in the most different sports. But his proximity, again, he's from up in the Canandaigua area, and that makes that a little bit easier for him. But he and his wife Joyce have been great supporters of Houghton over the years. So Terry, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. Maybe you could start out by talking about, heard this question asked earlier, but maybe thinking in your experience at Houghton, maybe talking about one individual who significantly impacted you and your time as a student.
Yeah, thanks, Skip. This is a very tough question because I have several staff and faculty members I listed down, but the one that stood out for me, and that led me to this scholarship or the giving, and after talking to Joe Liddick too before when he was working for the college, was Coach Burke. I didn't play soccer. I had a class with him, but I came to so many games I got to talk to him. We'd have coffee together like you and I have done a couple of times. Mm-hmm. He still knows me by my first name. I mean, that just doesn't happen. But I'm very grateful for his influence with friends of mine that played soccer. An interesting side note was my junior year, he came up to me and said, we're going to have a spring practice. Of course, all the seniors are, not involved. Would you, like to just help us out? And I'm thinking, I played class soccer a couple of years. I don't think I'm really qualified. And to be honest with me, I was very worn out after helping out. But he still today would call me by my first name. And that just doesn't happen a lot. So anyway, it would be Coach Burke among some professors toward my ultimate profession influenced me. But Coach Burke, I would say overall, just was that kind of person that led me to set it up for a soccer target. And I guess for the same reasons Gary was talking about, it wasn't siphoning off from something else. And then my involvement with the athletic board, there's so many things we'd like to see happen, but money is money, and they have to be directed accordingly.
Yeah, I think it's sort of cool to see that, and I didn't dwell on this in the introduction, but in addition to all of the work that Terry does with athletics, he's also been very helpful to our academic folks in advising, giving us some direction in our creation of our new criminal justice major. So he's been a great resource in that area as well. Terry, maybe you could take a minute like Chris did and just talk to us a little bit about why you decided to create an endowed gift. You just talked about why you focused on soccer specifically, but in a broader sense, why you decided to go with an endowed gift and whether you have any specific goals attached to that.
Well, I think the discussion started with Joe and then you, and I've talked to Karl too when he's attended the athletic board meetings and heard what he had to say. And just, I was waiting for a sign and I think what I got was God's permission to take a portion of whatever estate we have left. My wife and I have talked about this, and she's not a Houghton alum, but she's graduated from the King's College. Two of our kids graduated from Houghton. So we have a real strong connection.
Great. It's sort of interesting, obviously different ways to get to an endowment. That's one of the reasons I wanted both you and Chris to be able to share this morning. Chris sort of took the approach of, what do I do now with the resources I have right now? And you've sort of taken that approach of, I'm going to write this into my estate plan and do it in that way. Both obviously very legitimate ways to make this transpire. Some people wrestle with, I think you and I talked about this a little bit, but some people wrestle with how do you take that estate and how do you decide how to split it up and what things to include, and how does making a commitment to give some of that to a place like Houghton impact family and those kind of things. Any comments or thoughts along that line?
I think the reasoning we had is that we take whatever the money is at the end when we're both gone. We're not going to need it. So we have 4 children. We just figured, okay, they each get 20%. The church gets 10, Houghton gets 10. Whatever that amount is, it'll be different than it is today. And whatever amount that is, I think God's permitting us to do this.
A real wisdom, I think, in that percentage approach for people who might have concern. I know I've talked to a number of people. It's like, I don't have very much and there might not be anything left at the end kind of thing. And obviously, if you're thinking a specific dollar amount, that can cause issues, but you're talking about a percentage approach,
Right.
that doesn't create a problem.
Right.
Why do you think, you decide to make that estate plan and to focus on endowment? Why did you pick endowment as opposed to just a specific gift to a specific thing as part of your estate? Why is endowment so important in your mind?
Well, that gives the college some leeway in what they need to use it for at the time. We don't know what the future holds. We don't know what it'll be then. I won't be here. Coach Burke won't be here. Somebody will be here. And they'll look at the needs, and we just trust that the college is going to go in the direction they need to go, and whatever that would help, that's fine.
Awesome. Well, Terry, thank you so much. Appreciate you being with us this morning and taking time out of your schedule to share your wisdom with us. So really appreciate that.
I appreciate you guys too.
Thank you, Skip. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Chris. One of the things that reminds me of, someone periodically would say, well, what can you endow? And my answer is, you can endow anything, right? Whatever it is that's on your heart, whatever program, thing that you want to make sure continues to get funding in perpetuity, you have an opportunity to endowment. And it's the interest that's earned that provides for that ongoing gift from you, even when God has already taken you home. And I love that approach. That's the legacy part. I'm going to pass the baton once again to Dan Noyes. Dan serves as our Regional Director of Development, previously served as our Alumni Director, brings such history to this office. I am amazed at times the wealth of knowledge and the ability to connect the dots that Dan has. And if you haven't watched Dan, after this is over, go and check out his tour video. It's the fastest I've ever seen Dan move. And no, there's an online tour video on the homecoming schedule, which highlights some of the more recent additions for people that weren't able to be to campus or haven't been to campus. So Dan, if you'll introduce your guest.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. And thanks for all of you for being here today. One thing that people don't always understand about our jobs working in advancement at Houghton is that we get to travel around and visit generous people. And it's an incredible, it gives you an incredible perspective on humanity in general. And it just, I think, this has given, I think probably all of us who do this job another shot in the arm, because we haven't been able to travel as much. And just getting back in connection with folks who really are generous and who have fascinating stories and motivations. It's why we do what we do. So, and Jan Stoll fits into that category for sure. Jan and I met back in 2017, and it was because she had an interest in doing something like this for Houghton. And Jan is probably the quintessential lifelong learner. Love hearing about what she's doing now. She's usually busier than I am in terms of us connecting. She's working with Charles Colson's association. She's teaching Sunday school. She's doing voiceover work. She graduated from Houghton in 1969 with degrees in psychology and Spanish and a minor in sociology. Houghton is also where she met her husband, Timothy, who's a 67 grad, another history major. And has had her son also go to Houghton. So it's been a joy to get to know her, and the questions that she asks are, it takes our discussions into really interesting places about, global Christianity and the preparation for our students to wrestle with difficult questions. And she really cares about the type of education that we're giving students at Houghton. And knowing that and the fact that she's chosen to invest long-term in Houghton is just super encouraging. So I will say that I won't try to describe Jan to you. Sometimes with these Zoom things that you might not see her on your camera, but she is there. It's not like it's a 60 Minutes thing where she's trying to, obscure her identity in some way. But Jan, thanks for being here. Why don't you tell us what inspired you to set up your endowed scholarship?
Well, Houghton has always been very, very important to me and to my family. That's where I met my husband, as you said. And there are, I counted last night, 11 direct family members who have attended Houghton. And if you count their spouses, 16 people from the family have been influenced by Houghton. I decided to create an endowed fund because I wanted to honor my husband's memory. And both he and I had benefited greatly from scholarship monies when we were students at Houghton. In fact, without scholarships, I would never have had a chance at college. So I thought this would be a way to pass along our financial blessings and also to invest in the next generation, to help ensure their success and their flourishing and their well-being. So I thought it was a way to serve and bless other people through leaving a legacy in the form of a scholarship.
Yeah, and Jan, one of the things that emphasizes the longevity and the permanence of endowed scholarship is how you've involved your kids, and as you continue to work on the criteria for the scholarship, I know that you're involving your children in that process. Can you talk about your motivation for doing that?
Well, it's a family affair, I guess.
Yeah.
You might say. I'm very, very close to my children. I value their input as they value mine. So we work together on things.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people realize once they begin this process of endowing a scholarship that this is also a multi-generational gift, that when we give these scholarships out to students every year, that we get thank you notes, we get connections with the student who is receiving the scholarship, and those connections can be passed down to future generations. So you're passing down this connection to the institution, and you're also passing down these stories of these individual students and this culture of generosity that I just think that's fantastic, the way that you've connected your children to the process. Mm. Now, Jan, talk about
thank you.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. We talked about the method of funding this scholarship. Can you talk a little bit about what you realized you were able to do thanks to the IRA giving?
Well, I was fast approaching the age of 70 and a half. And at the time, I knew that was going to be the time when I would be forced to withdraw funds from my individual retirement account. And I also knew that if I donated those funds directly to a charitable organization, that would allow me to bypass federal taxes on that money. And that was very appealing. So that allowed me to give away more money than I normally would have been able to do. So I called Houghton and got connected with you, and you drove out to meet me and explain everything. I was a little taken aback at first to find out that this endowed scholarship that I was thinking about actually required a total of $25,000. But broken down over a period of 5 years, I felt that was doable. So I worked with you, Dan, to title the scholarship and to come up with a list of criteria for future recipients. And then I went to my financial advisor and told him what I wanted to do. And after the initial shock, which was, you want to give that money away? He'd never had anyone do that before. He and I worked to make it happen, and it was pretty painless on my end. I think my financial advisor had a lot of steps to take, but that's what I'm paying him for. So
Mhm. And we're grateful.
it was an
yeah.
easy do for me.
We're grateful for you training your financial advisor in that way, and hopefully other of his clients will now be helping charitable organizations in this way. And Jan is one of the only donors that I've ever called kind of frantically asking her not to make a gift because she had not quite turned 70 and a half yet. So I remember calling you a couple of weeks before. Jan, don't make the gift. Please wait 2 weeks because you won't get the tax benefit. Oh my goodness.
Yes. Yeah. I guess I had to be 70 and a half right on the day before you
Exactly.
could do it. So.
Yeah, well, Jan, we're just grateful. I know that the permanence of this scholarship, I mean, these endowed funds, they stay with Houghton long after all of us are gone, and they continue to benefit students that will never meet, and will continue to honor your husband. And thank you for your generosity, and thank you for being here today on this call.
You're quite welcome.
Hey, thank you. I mean, there were obviously some highlights for me in there. The connectivity for IRA giving, we have found that to be a wonderful giving vehicle. The ability to honor, you know, someone, a loved one. We have seen gifts created in family members, providers, beloved faculty, children, you name it. You know, so many great ways of honoring and remembering someone. One of the things before, you know, we open up to questions, and I want to make sure, Nancy, if you know how to unmute everyone, I would love for you to be able to do that while I'm talking right now, is to make the connection in this moment for what Houghton is doing coming out of the Impact campaign. So last week, we announced very publicly that Houghton is now the best priced Christian college in the nation. And we significantly lowered our cost of tuition to $15,900. And that is before TAP and Pell and any other institutional financial aid. That is remarkable. It's a big step for us. It should open the doors for lots of families around the world to be able to say, guess what? That sticker price is not cost prohibitive. What I also think it does very well is it allows for other alumni and friends to say, wow, my $1,000, my $5,000, now my $10,000 will absolutely make more than a significant difference for that particular student or a particular student, you know, and, you know very definitively that you're giving directly provides for that affordability. So we are so grateful for those who have given over the course of a recent history, but even those who have created endowment over many decades to get us to this point. So I'm excited about that. You have spoken strongly into the affordability and accessibility question that was the priority of Impact. So thank you, everyone. So questions, thoughts that you might have. I'm going through and asking those trying to unmute everyone as best I can. So unmute yourselves and
yes, I changed the
ask away.
setting so everyone can unmute themselves.
All right. Questions or thoughts for anyone here?
Karl, Fred Trexler here. What is the percentage income from the endowed scholarships right now?
So what are we awarding? Is that the question? So every year, and hopefully I'm answering this question correctly, and if I'm not, I'll share it anyway and then ask it again. But our Board of Trustees has an investment committee that determines how our endowed funds are invested. And then our entire board is making a decision about the percentage, the spend rate on a year after year basis. And that can vary from year to year, but a typical interest rate that we award is about 4.5%. And John, is that the correct number this year? Yes. He's shaking his head.
Yeah, Karl, 4.5% is the number that we're committed to. Anything else would be unusual. And the state would not allow us to take more than 7%, but we really want to stay at 4.5%. By the way, I should have mentioned Gary Bahler on our call here is the chair of that investment committee, and he brings all of his knowledge from his work at Foot Locker to the board on that score. So 4.5%, Dr. Trexler, is the percentage that we're committed to.
Yeah, this allows for the endowed fund to continue to grow year after year. Chris alluded to the endowment report. So anyone who creates an endowment, or a family member, if you tell us to share it with them, will get a very specific report detailing how much your endowment has grown over the last fiscal year, how much has been awarded. And one of the things we love to see is continued growth of endowment year over year over year. And that obviously means more and more scholarship or more and more aid that can be awarded from the endowment. Other questions?
I've just
got
a
one.
comment.
Larry, go ahead.
I'm curious, what is Houghton's endowment currently? And do you have any idea, we can recall what it's earned over the last 5 or 10 years on average?
John, you are unmuted, and you're probably best positioned to answer that question quick on your toes.
I don't know it right offhand, but the latest endowment report would have a chart showing the growth of the endowment. One of the things I don't know is that we aggressively have grown the endowment in gifts over the impact campaign. So I don't entirely know what was growth from investment versus what was growth from gifts. We would probably need, I mean, maybe Gary knows from his work on the investment committee, but otherwise we'd probably need our CFO or controller to help answer that specifically.
But one of the things that we could state is that over the course of the campaign, we saw our endowment grow upwards of over 35%. Is that the right number?
Right, in combining both gifts and appreciation.
Yeah.
Gary, it's approximately 50 million right now, correct? I mean, approximately.
Yeah, I actually did, thinking this question might come up, I did print out the report. So as of last December 31st year end, it was just a little over $54 million. Yeah. And in terms of the return, again, I've got a 3-year return, which is how long we've been using our current advisor. And over that 3-year period, we had a return of 12%, which was about 1%, a little bit more above what the benchmark would be for a return. So we did just a little bit better than our benchmark.
I just pulled up the data from our endowment reports, and as of the end of May, we were at about 58 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always nice when the stock market is going up. I mean, that does help a great deal. Yeah.
And that 4.5%, just if people are curious, means that, you know, obviously you can do the math if you have a calculator, but around $1,100 a year. And then once your endowment, once the principal of your endowment reaches 25,000, we do wait 8 quarters before we begin to give the scholarship away. We want to protect that principal. We want to let it grow before we start giving that away. And so there's a conservative approach to doing that. And many donors decide that during those 8 quarters, they want to give $1,000 a year to help start seeing that scholarship go to a student. And so that's one way to also allow the immediacy of benefiting from those student connections while also allowing that investment to grow so that it's a little bit more secure over time.
Yeah, Dan, it's a great, you know, as we talk about multi-year commitments and donors want to see their scholarships awarded as soon as possible, partner it with annual restricted gifts, and we can begin to award them even before it's fully endowed or past that 8-quarter period. Terry, you started to ask something or share something.
Well, I was just thinking of our grandchildren. Our oldest granddaughter is 16, so she committed to at least look at Houghton. Her brother always, who's 2 years younger, said, well, I'm going to Houghton. And our daughter in Australia, her son said, I want to go to, I don't know how that's going to happen, but I think he can go to school in Australia for nothing, but we have to work on that. So it's a family affair, which makes my heart feel good.
Yeah, Karl, I just wanted to add, and this goes back to something Jan said, but I mean, she talked about how she was drawing her children into this. One of the things that is also fascinating to me is the way that depending on if you decide to honor someone, it also invites other family members to come in who may or may not have anything to do with Houghton. Like, you know, my brother or my husband, Paul Mills, has a number of brothers. And because he wanted to honor his parents, then family members are contributing to that endowment who wouldn't necessarily themselves have that connection with Houghton. So it is an interesting way that by the choices individual donors make, you can also make a circle of giving and generosity toward the college that really can have some fascinating impact. So I just wanted to mention that to support what Jan has said as she mentioned her children. We've seen it with brothers and other kinds of family connections, as Paul's done that for his dad, Pop Mills, who some of you may remember if you were students in the 60s and 70s.
Well, again, thank you for making time for us this morning. Thank you for your interest in continuing to support the mission of Houghton College, which I firmly believe is more critical now than ever. And if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to contact any one of us here in Advancement or President Mullen. We are so grateful to you. Please continue to share your stories with others. It inspires me, and I'm confident it will inspire others moving forward as well. There are more activities. Please check out the homecoming schedule on our website, and there are hyperlinks to all kinds of things, including the recordings from yesterday. And I see you were quiet, Wendy, on this, but I'll say congratulations in being awarded one of our Alumni Service Awards, and thank you for leading the campaign effort as well. And we've asked Wendy to share her story before, but her and her husband, Chris, incredible commitment to their Bezalel Award, which is an endowed scholarship that has been, been great over the course of years here too. So I saw you on mute, Wendy. I thought you might say something.
I said, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Thank you. Thank you. Blessings on you all. Yes. And again, as Dan said, it was a blessing to see many of the faces here on camera, and we look forward to days when we can see you all in person again. So thank you for your prayers and your support. Take care.